Okay. So firstly, thank you all so much for coming. This class was meant to be given literally 2 years ago in Julia's home. Because of COVID, we had to stop it. So I hope it doesn't disappoint. And I hope now you can see my screen. If you can't, I have my phone by me. Oh, you can? Okay, I can only actually see Yvonne's face on my screen, so I can see your thumbs up. So I'm relying on you. Put a thumbs down, Yvonne, if there's a problem. Okay, so it's like I'm talking to myself a bit today. Okay, so Eishes Chayil. Okay, we sing it every Friday night after Shalom Aleichem. And when we look at the English text, for those of us who are not so fluent in Hebrew, when we read through the English text, sometimes when we read it, we're a bit startled by how it can be relevant to us as women in the 21st century. And what I want to do today is actually go through it in how I've understood it and take away some key themes that for me, I really resonate with me, and I see that run concurrently throughout all of the 22 verses. Now, what's interesting to note about Eishes Chayil is when you look at the verses, some of it may seem absolutely abstruse, and some of it you just don't. It's just beyond our understanding. What we've got to understand is the Eishes Chayil is a poem. It's a song that Shlomo HaMelech, we learn, wrote about his mother. And it's a parable, it's a metaphor. So when we're looking at a metaphor and a parable helps us concretize difficult concepts that we're already familiar with. But what we have to do is, when I've got a picture here of a doorman, but actually that doorman also could look with a different stripe and a different bar on his uniform, he could actually look like a soldier. But the only time you can differentiate a doorman and a soldier, if they were wearing that similar uniform, is by looking at absolute tiny details on their uniform, and that would be able to differentiate them. So we have to be able to look at the nuance, the words, the careful of the prose, to really understand the depth that is hidden within the Eishes Chayil in order that we can tap into its beauty. Now, when you come to our table, which many of you haven't done in years, because we haven't been hosting because of COVID, but for those of you who have come to our table, what you'll notice is, to my embarrassment, pretty much every Friday night, my wonderful husband gives a monologue of thanks to me before he sings Eishes Chayil. And he says it's a song about Jewish women, and he always, then whatever's happened that week, he tends to dwell on sharing that with the table. Okay, so then you might ask me, well, why, Lisa, do you sing? If your husband's saying to you, you're great, you're wonderful, and I'm going to sing a song to show how great and wonderful you are, why are you singing about yourself? It's like almost, I'm great, I'm wonderful, la 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 la. And the reason why I sing is because there are many midrashim and commentators that actually say that it's not actually a poem about us, just me. It's a poem that Shlomo HaMelech wrote for his mother, but there's also other commentators say that it's a poem about Hashem's relationship with the Jewish people. It's a relationship between body and soul. There's lots of Kabbalistic ideas. But one of the ideas that the Midrash states is actually, it goes through line by line of the Eishes Chayil, and it attributes each verse to another Jewish woman. And actually, the reason why we sing it on Shabbos, which is a day of completion and completeness, is because the Eishes Chayil represents the complete woman. And if you look at the Eishes Chayil, from Aleph, it starts at Eishes Chayil, and the last verse ends in Tav. And you see the whole alphabetic sequence of the Eishes Chayil running throughout. So the reason why we sing the Eishes Chayil on Shabbos, which is a day of completeness and completion, is because the Eishes Chayil represents the complete woman. And for those of you who do have the handout, and for those of you who don't, I can email it to you or WhatsApp it to you, and you'll have it. You'll see each verse relates to another Jewish woman from history. So when I'm singing the Eishes Chayil, I'm not just singing it about myself. I'm singing a song for all the Jewish women at my table, my girls, and anyone else at our table, but all the Jewish women that have come before and will come after me. It's also reminds me of lessons in personal development and potential and key themes that run throughout. And it shows me how ordinary women can do absolutely extraordinary things. Now, before we go into it, just one thing to note that I found really beautiful is the word Chayil has the gematria, has the numerical value of 48. And there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that states that the Torah is acquired in 48 ways. And it says it's acquired through learning Torah and doing acts of kindness, etc., etc. And one of the things that I think is beautiful is that the fact that the word Chayil has the numerical value of 48 teaches us that a woman, an Eishes Chayil that lives and imbues these ideals that we're about to outline, is able to share that Torah. If we're able to share that Torah in that complete and utter sense. There is a famous Rav in the 1700s, the Maggid of Mizrach, he's a Hasidic master, who says the Eishes Chayil is the crown of her husband. Okay, now if you think of a crown, I just put a funny quote there to make you laugh because I know it's a bit dense, my share. If you think about a crown defines a king. A king cannot be a king without a crown. A crown is connected to the head while staying simultaneously on it. It's a circle. So each point is equidistant from the center. It's surrounding. It gives purpose, it gives meaning and definition to that which it's connected to. That is a crown, and that is a Jewish woman. That's an Eishes Chayil, and that's actually one of the many reasons why a woman circles her husband around the chuppah, because we define the parameters, the boundaries of our husbands. We give them meaning and purpose, and we create those definitions. And we actually make our king, and he should make his king, the queen, his queen. So I want to outline different themes that for me are recurrent through the text. This class is almost like, as I said before, it's almost like a portrait gallery. So you go into an art gallery and you see loads of different pictures on the wall. And I'm literally taking a really cursory look at all the verses and kind of assigning them different areas, just so we can really distill a few key lessons that we can take away. So the first trait, the first theme that I feel personifies this beautiful, beautiful poem and song is Oz, the word of inner strength. So it says, Eishes Chayil mi imsa, a woman of strength who can find. Now, what does it mean, strength? What does that mean? What does the word Chayil mean? And we understand that true strength, a person's true strength comes from within. It's the personal battles that we fight daily that no one else sees. It's the power to perform the meaningless tasks that we see as meaningless and routine with enthusiasm. Challenge of our lives often is, even if you looked at my day-to-day, it wasn't very exciting. I did the same laundry, I did the same cooking, I did the same feeding the kids, making the kids sandwiches, you know, doing the same things. But the point of the Eishes Chayil is to find that inner strength and those inner sparks of inspiration and bring them out. And that's really what no one else sees. It's about coming to Shirim like this, to keep that inspiration going. And as we learn in Pirkei Avos, true strength is not out in the boxing ring or physical. It's actually someone that is able to overcome their natural desires. And that's what we learn from these verses. Now, if you look at the word Chayil and you read it slightly differently, it can also translate as Chayil, which means soldier in Hebrew. And what's very interesting is if you think of the word Chayil as soldier, an Eishes Chayil is a soldier. So we focus on the immediate situation, the day-to-day, and we do everything possible in our lives to make sure we're in a good state in that place. But we have to have in mind the long-term goal. It's about winning the battle. It's about not just winning this immediate battle of the day-to-day challenges, but it's about winning that war. We also, as soldiers, we protect our own lives, so our mental health and our physical health, and we look after self-care, but we also have to protect the lives of the other soldiers in that platoon. We're brave as soldiers. Soldiers are strong, they're focused and determined. We have to know who and what we believe we're fighting for, and when to follow orders and when to give them. And this is what a soldier does. And as soldiers, as an Eishes Chayil, as women, we have been tasked with many different roles. Some of us are sisters, some of us are, or we're all daughters, but some of us are first aiders. We have to be teachers. We have to be sometimes diplomats, like I was at my house if you'd have come over a couple of hours ago. We have to take on all board of these different roles, and there are battles, right? And we have to know when to be quiet and when not to be. And that is really the strength of the Chayil, the inner strength of that soldier. So now I want to look at the second element of the verse. Her worth is far above pearls. So the Eishes Chayil, a true Eishes Chayil, realizes this lesson of Pirkei Avos at the bottom of the slide. Who is rich? One who appreciates her lot. A woman has been blessed with such a woman that appreciates everything and everything she's been given with, even the challenges. No jewel can even compare to her worth in that sense. And there was a beautiful story that I once heard many, many years ago by Rebbetzin Altrusti, who is the daughter of Rabbi and Rebbetzin Scheinberg, who was a great Rav. And she tells a story of how one day she was at school, and the teacher announced to the class that there was going to be a school trip. And the teacher turns around and she says, "It's going to be a school trip tomorrow, and you need to bring in 10 cents to go to the school trip." You can imagine how long it'd go if it was only 10 cents. 10 cents to go to the school trip. So this girl, the daughter of Rav Scheinberg, sat there and went and took her bags and went to go home. And a friend came up to her and said, "You're not going to be able to go on the school trip tomorrow." So she looked at her and said, "Why not?" She goes, "You're poor. You won't have 10 cents to be able to go on the trip tomorrow." So very dejected, she went home and she was really sad, but she didn't want to tell her mummy what had happened because she didn't want to hurt her feelings. So eventually her mummy saw her and she said, Rebbetzin Scheinberg saw her and she said, "What's wrong, darling?" And she said, in her muffled voice, she said, "Shoshana says I won't be able to go on the school trip tomorrow." And the Rebbetzin says, "But why not?" And she says, "Because we're poor and we've got no money." And the mummy and Rebbetzin Scheinberg said, "How much does the trip cost?" So she says, "It costs 10 cents. And she turned around to her daughter and she said, "You tell Shoshana that we are not poor. We have everything we need. Poor people don't give. We have people at our Shabbos table every week. We give of our time. We give of our essence. We give everything. We have everything we need except money." And Rebbetzin Scheinberg gave her daughter 10 cents. And she said, "Here's 10 cents for you and 2 cents for Shoshana, another 2 cents for you to buy yourselves a drink." And with that, Rebbetzin Altrisky finished the story, but she said what was interesting is until the point where her friend Shoshana had mentioned the word poor, she had never in her life felt poor or even heard that word. Why? Because she felt rich. She felt truly content with everything she had. She might not have had all the physical things that her friends had, but she felt rich in who she was. And that was the lesson that her mother was teaching her. Now, throughout the verses of the Eishes Chayil, and again, just because we're short on time, I'm not going to go into this, but just so you know, the strength is reiterated. This is a key theme that is reiterated throughout the verses. In verse 8, when it talks about she girds herself with strength and braces her arms for strength, we're talking about here the strength and courage that Eishes Chayil gets when she rekindles her inspiration, when she motivates herself. We also talk about, the verse talks about she's clothed with strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days to come. She's clothed with strength. The garments of her soul are clothed in strength. That, you know, in our thoughts, in our speech, in our deed, those are the garments of our soul. And that's the strength that a woman imbues. Both the women, if we think about just Miriam is one of the verses of verse 8, she's the woman that the verse alludes to. And if we think about the strength and courage of Miriam, the fact that she turned round to her father with true bravery and courageousness and said, Daddy, you're worse than Paro. You're killing you want to kill all the girls and boys of the Jewish people by preventing husbands and wives from being intimate together, whereas Paro just wanted to kill the Jewish boys. Daddy, please stop this. You know, she held on, if you remember the visual reminder of the tambourine, which we spoke about this Shabbos for those of you who are in shul, and she held on to that because she had the inner strength and the courage and the emunah, which we'll get to later, to know that things were going to be okay and soon she'd be dancing. So rather than just panic and take the mutzahs on her back, she also clutched onto her tambourine because she knew soon there was going to be a time for joy. So just to reiterate this theme, just this one theme, we're talking about personal bravery, the inner strength that others may not see, the soldier, the fact that we're soldiers in the battle of life, that we're focused on that long-term goal, but that we remain determined and focused. The fact that the strength of a nature of the Eishes Chayil is to overcome our nature. That's the true inner strength. It's what no one else will see or necessarily even know. And it's the appreciation, realizing that we're able to stay strong and that we're able to appreciate everything we've been blessed with. And that when things are hard, we rekindle that and we try to re-motivate ourselves. And especially in this dark time, when it's nighttime, it's depressing, you know, and we have to keep going. So Oz is one theme. The second theme that I want to really allude to is the concept of Bina, insights. And it always puzzled me, this verse, until I really understood it on a much deeper metaphorical sense. She seeks wool and linen and works willingly with her hands. Okay, so it might be, my grandmother was a seam mistress. And my mother-in-law's on the call, she knows I can't even sew a button on. I have to give it all to her. For my grandma, this verse she would have loved it, right? She seeks wool and works willingly with her hands. She was great. But for me, I don't relate to it. So when we look at it from a purely pashat, for a simplistic level, it's very hard to relate to. So we have to delve much deeper. And what our rabbis are teaching us is that we have to look really deep into what these words mean. So when we look at wool, what is the concept? Wool comes from sheep. Wool keeps us warm. We wear woolly jumpers. There's something that keeps us warm in the winter. And linen keeps us cool in the summer. And my grandma, as being a seam mistress, I always remember as a little girl, she used to take me round, and as she used to go round with, and if I liked something in Marks and Spencer's or something, she would clutch hold of it in her hand and hold it really, really tight. And so you have to hold this for 5 seconds and see if it creases. And if it creases, it's linen. Yvonne's, and it remembers. And if it creases, it's linen. And she said, it won't be forgiving, Lisa. It's the worst material ever. Don't do it. Don't buy it. And I never bought it because it was linen. Now, if you apply, but linen is strong, it's durable. If we apply these physical attributes to the emotional, to emotionally, what we see is wool represents soft, kindness, loving kindness, chesed. It's protective, it's insulating, and it's connecting. Linen, on the other hand, is strong, it's purposeful, it's defining, it's discipline, it's creating those boundaries. Okay. What we're talking about is an Eishes Chayil is able, she seeks wool and linen. She is able to look at wool and linen and seek it out and know when to deploy kindness and warmth and sensitivity, and also be strong. So she's able to intertwine those two things, be kind, but with strength and with boundaries. And she's able, as Eishes Chayil at the bottom of the page, of recognizing the distinction between these energies and varying them accordingly. She does so with a keen readiness, representing her inner desire and appreciation and purpose. Now, if you think about it, you might turn around to me and say, Lisa, but I don't understand. There's a law. Yes, it's a hok in Jewish understanding. A hok means a law for which there is no explanation and no one really knows why. But there is a law of shutness, not to mix wool and linen in our clothes. We go to a shutness center, we get things checked. So why is the verse talking about an Eishes Chayil seeking wool and linen when actually there's a prohibition to wear wool and linen? Well, actually, you're right. The pasuk here is that we should not wear wool and linen together, but yet there are 3 garments that have wool and linen, and they are 3 holy garments. Actually, it's the tzitzit that a man wears, it's the clothes of a Kohen, of a Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and it's the talis. Now, in all 3 garments of these, there is a mixture of wool and linen. So when we look at the verse and we say an Eishes Chayil seeks out the wool and linen, a woman looks for ways to combine the trait of kindness and boundaries in the right way. She realizes that both have their time and place. And sometimes, such as in the case of, I don't know, a child running out to the middle of the road, a kind word wouldn't be the right approach in that sense. At that point, you want to be strict and shout and yell, because you don't want your daughter or son or whoever to run out in the middle of the road and be hit by a bus or a car. So we have to know, and Eishes Chayil has to know when to be kind and warm and lovey and fuzzy, but when to exact those boundaries. And that's what we mean by she seeks wool and linen. She seeks those opportunities of when she can combine those 2 approaches, but also she knows when to deploy which energy. So she has the insight, the bina, the bina yesera, the real added, the extra dimension of wisdom to know when to do what. Rabbi Tatz writes beautifully about this. And bina, he says, shares the same root as the word bain, which means to separate, and bonnet, which means to build. Okay. Now, if you think about the 2 words, separate and build, they both have actually opposite meanings, because when you're thinking about separating something, you're moving it away, but to build something, you're creating something, you're building something new. So but Rabbi Tatz teaches the fact that they share the same root, and we learn from Hebrew words. When we look at and try to understand the meaning of Hebrew words, we have to look at the 3-letter subroot, and it teaches us, it gives an idea of the meaning of the word. When we look at the root of the word bina, They share the same root, and it teaches us, Rabbi Tat says, something very unique. If you're able to separate something, you can unite. If you can separate and understand, then you can unite in harmony. And Rabbi Tat says this is how the woman built Klal Yisrael, built the people of Israel. So he gives 3 different examples. He said Sarah separated Yishmael. If you remember from the story, she separated him from the story because she knew that he was going to be corrupt, and she was worried for her house. Rivka separated Esav from Yaakov. And if you remember the story, Yaakov consulted Rachel and Leah as to when they should leave the house for Lavan, and when they said they should go, they went. It was Rachel and Leah that built the boundaries, because they knew when to separate themselves in order to build something new. You have to distinguish to build, and almost separate it to build. And almost this is the power of insight. Who is the woman of this verse? The woman of this verse is Leah Imenu, Yaakov's wife. And if you look at her life, she was able to distinguish both between the energies of chesed and gevura and strength, and she deployed them beautifully. And if you think about Leah, she had it really tough. I always feel sorry for Leah. She was the one that Yaakov didn't really want to marry. She was the wife that Yaakov didn't really want, and she didn't have it so easy, right? But everything she did was with graciousness, appreciation, and sensitivity. She was very sensitive to those around her because she had the binah. She had the insight to know when to do and what to do. There's one last verse that I just want to emphasize in the Eishes Chayil that for me also articulates this theme, is verse 7. When the literal translation is, she considers a field, buys it from her earnings, and she plants a vineyard. Now, often when we think about a Jewish woman and Jewish women being in the home, this verse actually shows us, and there's lots of other verses also in the text, but just for virtue of time, we can't go into it, that doesn't just relegate the Jewish woman to the home. This is one verse that actually shows how a woman isn't just a homemaker. She also goes out to the work and works and has business acumen, and she has that business ability, and she's not just relegated to the home. And by what it's saying is she considers a field. So she looks at a prospective business proposition. She's buying it. She's considering buying it from her earnings, and she's planting a vineyard. So if you think about it, if you think about what this is, she's buying a field which she doesn't know. She's looking at something in its potential form. Okay, but she's placing a future investment in it. She's using her insight and her knowledge to project and think, okay, I'm going to look at the long-term investment of this. Is it worthwhile? And as we know, wine takes a long time to gain, to mature and therefore be profitable. But she plants a vineyard because she wants to invest in the future generation. We live in a world now which is full of instant gratification. You want your supper hot, you want it now. And I have to say, I fall to this. I'm just as bad as the next person. We Snapchat in 10 seconds, we tweet in 140 characters or less. Faster is better, less is more. I love WhatsApp. I love all these devices that make our lives quicker. But actually, when we really look at it the things that have moved me the most and the things that have built me as a person are the things that have really taken effort and really, really taken time. And in order to be able to really get that payoff, we have to invest our time. We have to own it, whether it be that, I don't know, that personal best on the run that we're working out on, whether it be the exams, whether it be a qualification we're pushing ourselves on, whether it be a hard job that we're trying to achieve. Whatever it is, our achievements often the ones we're most proud of comes from those that are hardest work. And this is this concept of Bina, of having the insight to not just look at the immediate now, it's to have the foresight to look at the long-term solution and put that in the realm of action. And our great leaders of the time, we know Aaron, Hakohen, Moshe Rabbeinu, Miriam. Who was their mother? Yocheved. And she is the person, the woman of this verse. She was the ultimate role model who had the concept of Bina. She knew this necessity of when to be flexible and focus on that end goal. And actually, we learn nothing about Amram, the father of these three greats, these brothers and sisters. We only know about Yocheved in terms of her insight. And it was her insight that created and made these people who they were. Okay, so just in terms of this second theme is Bina Yisera, so it's female intuition that I feel runs throughout the verses of Eishes Chayil. And what's this? This is the ability to discern critical differences between situations or entities, which on the surface seem familiar. It's about filtering and differentiating when to use chesed, the soft approach, and linen, when to create boundaries and be harsh and create that definition. And we've brought out a few, but there's so many more examples of Torah giving exercise of Torah women exercising this gift of Bina. Okay, the third theme, and I'm only doing 5, so don't panic. I am going to go quicker because I'm very conscious. I promised you would be finished by 8:45, but you'll forgive me if we were on 5 minutes on. So the third theme that I would like to feel that for me really comes out in the verses is the fact that a woman has emunah, has faithfulness. It doesn't literally translate emunah as faith, blind faith. It's faithfulness to Hashem and his Torah. And we spoke about this a little bit earlier with Miriam holding the tambourine. And the time of the Egyptian enslavement is actually one of the main focal points of this, because we learn it was actually in the merit of the Jewish women that followed the leadership of Miriam, but in the merit of the Jewish women that we were actually redeemed from Egypt. What's interesting is trust is something that we all so desperately want. It's so hard to gain, but it's so easy to lose. And faith is, trusting someone, there is no real way we can 100% trust someone completely, because no one is able to fulfill all the preconditions that real trust means, that they're able to give you everything you want, that they're able to be that person that you want as and when, exactly when you need. No, we're humans, and therefore there's no person can have that as much as we want them to. No one other person can have that element of trust that we so desperately seek in another. But what's interesting is when we look at the word daga, which means to worry, which means worrying, which I am a big warrior. That is a big thing of mine. When I looked at that word many years ago, when I was in SEM, I found out that it actually contains the first of the 5, contains 4 of the 5, contains 4 letters of the first 5 of the alphabet, but it's missing 1. What's the letter that it's missing? It's missing the letter base, which actually begins this verse, okay? And base actually stands for is missing because it stands for the word bitochon, meaning security and trust, which teaches us something so beautiful. The way we eradicate worry is to be able to put our bitochon, our trust in ourselves and in others. We have to put that bitochon, that base back in, the base which represents bitochon, into that worry, and then there won't be the worry anymore. And actually, when we look at the 3 mitzvahs that have been given to a Jewish woman, we learn that a husband should trust in her, right? Trust in her. This doesn't just mean he should give her the car keys or the house keys and trust in her. It means that it's so much deeper than that, that a man should emotionally trust his wife. And one of the reasons why we were given these 3 mitzvahs is to emphasize this point. We were given the 3 mitzvahs of Shabbos candles, challah, and tarish mishpacha, which all rely on trust, on a husband trusting his wife. Okay, so let's understand this a little bit more. Shabbos candles, when you light your Shabbos candles, right, or when a woman lights her Shabbos candles, the other people in the household rely on her, often aren't there. They might be at shul. If you're married, the husband might be out. He is out of shul, but he's relying on you to light those Shabbos candles. Trust comes in here. Challah, when we make challah, when we take challah and say the bracha, or in general, in terms of kashrus of our kitchen, our husbands, our families, the people that come into our home trust that we're keeping those laws and that we're really upholding them, and they rely on us. Similarly, in the laws of tarish mishpacha, which literally means the laws of marital intimacy, which I would love to give a whole nother class on because they're so beautiful. But a man trusts his wife when to say it can be intimate and when to say they have to separate. And all 3 mitzvahs rely on a man trusting his wife. And we see that Sarah teaches us, is this woman, the woman of this verse. She teaches us this trait of emunah, because we're taught that it was actually in her merit that the candles would burn from week to week, the challah the dough would stay fresh from week to week, and the clouds of glory, we know, rested upon her and Abraham's tent because she kept the laws of marital intimacy. Trust. Okay, when I was a little girl, my parents taught me 2's good, but 3's a crowd. They always used to say, don't do 3. And actually, as a little girl, how much did you want to outgrow those stabilizers and go on a 2-wheeler bike? You wanted to get rid of that tricycle and go on that 2-wheeler. But actually, when you look at it, a triangle and the tripod and the tricycle have stability. And what Jewish thought says is, in every relationship, a Jewish relationship is not 1, it's not 2, but it's 3. Any relationship relies on 3 things in order for it to be steady and secure. It relies on the third partner being HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being Hashem. And at the bottom I've written, as I said earlier, no one can fulfill all the preconditions for trust that our rabbis teach us, being that of wise enough to know what is good for us, being there for us all of the time, being so powerful nothing can stand in our way, and no person can simply fulfill all of this. We're human and therefore we're limited. Okay, and this is the conclusion of emunah. We're gatekeepers. As women, we're the gatekeepers of emunah. And for those of you who are at my class, I think when I gave it very early on in the Belmont days, we have the ability to see the complete picture, to not necessarily see the complete picture, but hold on to the fact that there is a complete puzzle picture of that everything will make sense one day. We just don't know. At the moment, we just have the pieces of puzzle in our hand and we can't see that complete picture. But our job and the job of the Eishes Chayil is to hold on to that tambourine and to hold on to that thought, because there will be a time when we'll be dancing. There will be a time when it's clear why we've had to go through those challenges, and we'll be able to see with striking clarity everything why it had to happen and why it had to be this way. Okay, so the 4th theme that I would like to bring out is that of chesed. Chazal teach us, our rabbis teach us, that the Torah has 2 dimensions. I'm very, very conscious of time, so I'm going to go quick. I might skip a bit, but the Torah has 2 dimensions, that of truth, emes, and that of chesed. MS focuses on details, nuances, and intricacies, whereas Chesed focuses on kindness, empathy, and compassion. So when we look at this, and Rabbi Jacobson teaches, whenever we look in the Torah, we always see that Chesed comes before MS. Chesed, kindness, always comes before truth. When we sing the 13 attributes of mercy, we say Chesed ve'emes. When Eliezer was finding a shidduch for Yitzhak, he looked, I missed a spelling mistake here. He looked for someone with Chesed ve'emes. When Yaakov asked Yosef to take him out of Egypt, he said, do so with Chesed ve'emes. When Sarah Schneer, Sarah created the Beis Yaakov schools, she didn't call them Beis Moshe or Beis Leah, or she didn't call them that. She said Beis Yaakov. Why? Because she was referencing the verse when it came to the time of Har Sinai, when Hashem was giving us the Torah. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, speak to the house of Yaakov and tell the sons of Israel, speak to the women. The house of Yaakov represented the women. Speak to the house of women, because if the women accept the Torah, then the Torah will last for generations upon generations. And then if they accept it, then tell the men. And that is the concept of Chesed. There was a beautiful story that I heard it's beautiful from Y.Y. Jacobson, and he said in the 1950s, when they just recovered from the Holocaust, the Pomeranian Rav was fundraising for a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael in Bnei Brak, and he went to South Africa to try to raise some funds. And as he was going to South Africa to raise the funds, he found out on the way that the donor that he was specifically going to was very, very anti-religious. He was so angry with everything that happened in the Holocaust, and he would give money, but just the Ponevezher Rav should be very, very careful how he approaches him. Anyway, the Ponevezher Rav told him his plans for the yeshiva, and the donor turned around to him and said, I'll give you $1 million. I will give you $1 million to set up this yeshiva. He said, but the deal is no one should come out of there wearing a yarmulke or tzitzit. No one. Someone's put something on the chat. Oh, thank you. No one should come out of that yeshiva wearing a yarmulke and tzitzit. So the Ponevezher Rav said, okay, I take that on board. I'll take the $1 million, and no one will come out wearing yarmulke and tzitzit. So the Gebayim, that his people who were around him, turned around and said, well, I don't understand. You just lied, because obviously the yeshiva bochrim are going to come out wearing yarmulkes and tzitzit. So the Ponevezher Rav said no. He said, and he went back to Bnei Brak and he opened seminaries for girls. And he said, this way, no one will come out wearing yarmulkes and tzitzit. And he did everything lishma. And one day, the women were singing, the girls. I don't know if any of you have been to a Sem or Gateshead. I've never actually had the privilege of going to Gateshead to hear all the girls singing, but the singing of loads of women together is just unbelievable. The singing coming out of that was so great that there was a gentleman that was learning in a nearby yeshiva that was so angry. He was like, I cannot learn because all I can do is these women from the nearby seminary are disturbing me. I cannot concentrate on my learning. It's ridiculous. So he went to the Chazon Ish and he said, I'm so angry. I'm so angry. Like, you've got to shut this yeshiva down. So the Pomeranian Rav took his questions to the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish looked at him and said, you can tell this man that if you, he turned around to the man and said, these girls sing. The orphans that you brought into the seminary, they sing. The Chazon Ish turned around to the Ponevezher Rav, and the Ponevezher Rav realized then what the Chazon Ish was saying. He was basically turning around and saying to him, the message the Chazon Ish left the Ponevezher Rav with was that the fact that these girls can sing, and the chesed that we should show these girls who are orphans, who have been through such hell in all the camps and over the Holocaust, the fact that this man is so, he can't learn, that's not chesed. He's seeking MS. And we learn that chesed comes before MS. So therefore, if you lack the empathy and love, creativity, respect and individuality, and then you're divorced from the essential part of Yiddishkeit. We have to love people. That has to come first and foremost. And this is the feminine aspect that is repeatedly reiterated throughout the verses of the Eishes Chayil. There's two other things that I'm just gonna rush past this slide a little bit because I'm just so conscious of time. But chesed, gemilus chesed, acts of kindness. Gemilus means to wean off, to distance oneself, to create separation. And kindness means to give, to connect, and to join. So what do we understand by acts of kindness? True acts of kindness is the feeling that they're not receiving at all, that they're completely independent and weaned from you. And actually, this is a concept I just taught Miri in one of her bas mitzvah lessons when we talk about tzedakah. It's the same concept. The concept is that a person, it's the age-old concept, give a man a fish and he can eat for a day, or teach a man how to fish and he can eat for the rest of his life. The same is true here. We have to be kind in a beautiful and sensitive way, and in a way that someone wouldn't even realize. And this is the way that Hashem treats us, that nothing that we get, we deserve nothing. You know, and it's our job to copy that and emulate that in our relationships. And this was Rivka, when we learn about Rivka, when she fed the camels and gave the camels water to drink. If you remember, the way they chose her to be the wife of, you know, the patriarch, was the fact that she allowed the camels to all drink at the same time. She put the trough of water there, but they drank it. It wasn't she was singling out one camel after another. And that was her kindness. That was her essence. So just to chesed is being holistic, integrated, empathetic, and compassionate. It's our dominant trait as women, and it's the ability to be. This ripples throughout all the verses of the Eishes Heart, and it's a common theme. For those of you who have to go, please just go. I'm so sorry. It's going to be another 5 minutes, and then I've got something else to show you. The last theme that I really want to bring out is that of a woman's beauty, and it's something that I alluded to when I spoke on Shabbos. And the Gemara teaches us that women have a special capacity to radiate beauty. And we talk about charm being deceptive and beauty is vain. And it's the God-fearing woman who deserves praise. It's the Yira Shemayim. It's not the externality. It's not saying how amazing we are. It's the fact that we listen to Hashem and we do the right thing. And what's interesting to note is, as you know, Eishes Chayil, we're likened to a pearl, no precious than a pearl. And a pearl in Hebrew is peninim, which shares the same two-letter subroot for the word internal, pneumius, and for face, external, which is what teaches us is when one is true, when your true inner sense comes out, that is reflected on your face. And what's interesting to note is, unlike any other gem, a pearl is perfect when it's formed. There's no cut, like in a diamond, you have to shave it off and sharpen it, but hidden within the oyster is actually a perfect pearl. And how is it created? A pearl, which I never knew, is created when the oyster finds foreign material outside of it, and it actually creates these levels and layers of material in order to protect itself. And actually, when you look at the inside of a pearl, there's actually the core challenge that it's had to overcome, and that's a woman. And we learned earlier, women have strengths, right? But we overcome them, and we build ourselves around that, and we create our beauty, and we create layers and layers of coping mechanisms and things and people around us in order to help us overcome that challenge. I heard I read something really beautiful many years ago that really articulates this even further. And it shows the real beauty. When you look at a fake pearl and when you look at a real pearl, there are real distinguishing features. So a fake pearl is too perfect. A real pearl is formed by nature and will always have imperfections if you look close enough, okay? So too, every one of us has imperfections, right? It's our goal in order to radiate our beauty, to overcome that. Fake pearl will have no deviations in size. A real pearl won't appear flawless and will be varied. We are all different and we all have flaws, whether we like to admit it or we don't, but we're all different and we should celebrate that difference on that little pearl necklace. A fake pearl has the same color and it's flat in tone. We have, as real pearls, we have depth, body, and an overtone color. A fake pearl will look shiny, but won't show depth and true luster. A real pearl possesses luminosity and reflects light. We reflect off other people. If we're around positive people, we reflect that energy. A fake pearl, if you cut it open, it will be full of nothing. When you see someone and they're just talking aimlessly and they're just trying, and it's empty sometimes. You listen to people and sometimes it's like, well, where's the substance coming from? Well, a real pearl, if you cut it open, you'll see its true nature and you'll see that they've worked hard on themselves. And it's our differences. The lesson of the pearl really is our differences, our imperfections, and our variety that make us who we are, that make us valuable, and reminding us that we're perfectly imperfect. And just to conclude, the one sentence that always rings to my mind the whole time and always kind of, I always think about, and just on a Friday night, when we say, many women have excelled, but you surpassed them all. Rabos banos Chayil viet al kulana al kulana. And when we sing this verse, it reminds me that an Eishes Chayil should be the best person that she can be. Like, we always have to be the best person, not the best someone else, for me, not the best anyone else called Lisa, but the best Lisa Levene I can be. I won't remain complacent. I won't pretend to be the most righteous Rebbetzin or righteous person that's ever lived. I am a normal individual that is working on her own challenges, but is committed to surpassing and being better every day, to be a better person than I was yesterday. I have normal days, I have off days, but my focus is that of a soldier, trying to be my best, connecting with Hashem, having that Yiras Shamayim, and being a living example to those all around me in order to be able to grow in each day. All of history is defined by the past. Jewish history is based on the future. We define exile by redemption. And an Eishes Chayil, a woman of valor, doesn't just look at who we are right now, but what we can become. And we always strive to be the best that we can be. And with that, I'm going to just end on a concluding video that I want to share with you that's a few minutes. But the 5 themes that I brought out of the Eishes Chayil that really speak to me, and again, this is just my take on it, but the real themes that really resonate with me are Oz, a woman's strength, the Bina, the insight, the Emunah, the faithfulness, the Chesed, the loving kindness, and the sheer beauty, the allowing our inner world to shine outwards. I'm just going to stop share for 30 seconds because I'm going to just share another screen with you. But before I do, actually, does anyone want to just ask me if there's any questions? And then I'm just going to conclude with no, okay, fine. I'm also just going to put in the chat for anyone that came a bit later. I'm just going to share now there's a handout that goes through each verse of the Eishes Chayil, that with each description of the woman that I've done myself. I'm happy if you want to come over, or I can leave some at shul. there's handouts there that goes through each verse and a description of each of them. So now I'm just going to share my screen again. You should have got that. Okay. Let me just share sound. Okay, I'm hoping you can hear. If you can't, if someone will just text me, that would be great.
Eishes Chayil Nimta V'rachayk mipnini V'rachayk mipnini Michra Oy ba Talis al kula
Oh, thank you, Julia. Thank you all for your lovely comments. Is there any questions? Again, I really ran through and because I could spend literally probably, I was thinking about it in the car today. There's so much content. I could literally give a class on each of the 5 themes in of itself. And actually the verses, the 22 verses, you could give a class on each of the 22 verses, but I would be worried to bore you all. So, but there's so much depth, and I've just given such a cursory, superficial view to the depth of it. But I hope through looking at it, some verses will speak to you more than others, and other words you might want to pick out. I don't know. And then just think about at the Shabbos table, you know, like just each week I sometimes think of a different word, and it just helps me connect. So I don't know.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure. And I'm sorry for running on. Forgive me. I'll do an extra al-khayt this year.
That's all. Definitely worth waiting for.
Yes.
Oh.
Lovely. Thank
Yes.
you, Lisa.
And if you want the video or the handout, just WhatsApp me and I'll send it to you, and you can forward it on to whoever you like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Very well done. It's beautiful.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots and lots of love.
Thank you.
Take
Good
care.
Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos. Thank you,
Good
Lisa.
Shabbos.
Pleasure.